Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. We've got a little bit of breaking news for you, as I'm sure you have probably heard by now. The verdict is in on the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Sean Diddy Combs has been found not guilty on 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and RICO or racketeering conspiracy, and has been found guilty on transportation for prostitution, which are the 2 counts of those, which are the lesser of the 5 total charges. So what that means is there is a possibility that Sean Combs may go home today. The judge has asked the prosecution to bring him case law showing where bail was denied, defendant detained for transportation for prostitution. Basically, show me where this particular case has happened previously in another case, or this, these particular charges, occurred in another case, and the defendant was, detained, was held. Basically, he's saying, I'm not going to set a precedent here. If you can't prove where this has been done before, where we held somebody, detained someone until sentencing, denied bond based on these particular charges that they were convicted on, I'm not going to be the one to set the precedent. I'm not going to be the one to do it. So it looks like Diddy, it is possible that Sean Diddy Combs may be going home today. Now, one thing that I was surprised on, I will say, is that he was not found guilty on the RICO. I thought, if anything, he would be found guilty on that, just with all of the testimonies and the evidence that has come out over the past, 7 to 8 weeks of the trial. RICO is the one that I knew for sure that he would be found guilty on. Of course, the sex trafficking, I felt like the prosecution had a pretty strong case, but due to witness testimonies and some of the witnesses saying that they wanted to, have these certain hotel nights at times, and certain times they did it, I think that probably put a doubt in the juror's mind, because remember, everything when you're talking about conviction has to be done without a reasonable doubt, excuse me. And so the fact that, testimonies were coming through with, it wasn't coercion. Well, I don't think they came out outright said that, but that they were doing it a lot of the times. Cassie was saying she did it to have that special one-on-one time with him. That was the one time that they did get to spend together, was, during those freak offs. She had him to herself then, for the most part, at least, that one-on-one time with him. And that the text messages, saying that, you're due for another one, or I want it again, or, all of these things put doubt in the juror's mind in terms of sex trafficking by force and coercion and, other things. So anytime there's a reasonable doubt, you're talking about somebody's life here. You really can't just go off on what you think or what you feel like It always go back to, what you can prove in court. And the jurors just didn't feel like the prosecution proved those particular charges. Now, of course, when the verdict was read, had a few different sites up, watching, getting the information in real time. And a lot of people feel like with the maximum sentences that he can get is 20 years, is 10 years for each of the 2 charges he was found guilty on, being that he does not have any prior convicted criminal history. That's why I say that he, could quite likely go home today until sentencing. And even if he is detained, let's just say that, or not, he very well likely could, at a minimum, do, a couple of years, 2.5 years or so, just because he does not have a criminal history. He has no criminal history at all outside of these 2 charges. And these 2 charges by themselves don't carry heavy sentencing in terms of your first offenses. This is not like the second or third time he's been convicted of transportation for sex trafficking. This is the first time, and he has no criminal history. Now, we can look at the allegations, we can look at the civil suits, we can look at what he was found not guilty on today, but none of those are allowed to be taken into consideration by the judge in terms of sentencing. So we on the outside are always looking, with a grand eye view of, well, look at all this other stuff. And yeah, if he is allowed bond and he gets to go home, Diddy's fleeing the country, like he's not coming back. We can look at it like that, like he's a flight risk, he's dangerous to the public, to maybe even perhaps some witnesses, but they have to show, again, the prosecution has to show prejudice. They have to show proof that he's a flight risk. He doesn't even have access to his private plane. Now, the common person, of course, would say, well, he's a man of means, he has wealth, I'm sure he has access to other planes, even if it's not specifically his plane, but surely he can access someone's private plane. So, and while that's quite possible, and maybe even a little bit of common sense, that doesn't apply in terms of legal proceedings and the law. So, it's going to be interesting to see. I know that probably by the time I post this, within another few minutes or so, the prosecution and defense will be back in, trial will be resumed, and we will know whether or not he will be detained or if he will have access to bond today and go home. Now, his bond is set at $1 million, which of course bond is 10% of that. So that's $100,000. I'm pretty sure that Diddy has $100,000 in the bank, or at least has access to it in liquidity or in assets to where he can obtain the money for bail. Now, as I do understand, Diddy's also made $4.1 million over the course of the, I think, 8.5, 9 months that he's been locked up. He's made $4.1 million just off of renting his private plane. So he's still been finding ways to make money from that particular avenue or that particular revenue. So we don't know how things are going to turn out. My personal opinion, I think that he goes home today. I think that, unless the prosecution can show where bond was denied for this particular offense under the Mann Act, I think he goes home today. I think his family has this little bit of a win, this time with him. I think sentencing will take place in, 2 to 3 months. He'll have that time to spend with his family. And then probably, in my own personal opinion, I don't see him doing more than 4 years. I know 20 years is the max, and the prosecution is seeking 20 years for the max, but I don't see him doing more than 4 years total time behind bars, and I think the rest remaining on probation. That's how I see it, but I'm not, of course, a legal expert. Just going off of my understanding of the law and people that have previous offenses and those who don't, and especially with the nature of the charges, the severity or lack thereof. Now, in terms of the victims, Cassie Ventura, Jane Doe, other Kid Cudi, Punisher, I can't recall the name of the witness, the assistant, my mind just went blank at this, Capricorn Clark. Do I think that they're in danger? Possibly, but I don't think they're any more danger with him being in bars than they are with him being outside of the bars. And I say that just because he has reach regardless. He has reach regardless. Diddy is not a one-man operation. He has hundreds, or at least 100 people that he could probably count on to do something if he wanted something done to either one of those individuals. I think that he will play it smart, whether he gets in or not. I don't think he's going to go after anybody that testified against him. I don't think he should go after anyone that testified against him, because no one really vehemently came outside of Capricorn Clark, said anything that we really kind of didn't know in terms of the freak-offs. With the text messages being read, a lot of it, I'm not going to say seemed consensual, because, we don't have text messages from every single time that they had these freak-offs or, hotel nights. have a text message from each one of those to say this is the one time I didn't consent. I'm just going off a testimony where it was, well, if I didn't do it, then this. Well, and I guess that's where the coercion came into play. But then there are text messages saying that you wanted to. So, and I think Jane Doe was saying that she loved him. Happy birthday. She missed him. So all those things come into play. I don't think he's going to go or have anyone to go after these victims, especially when you think of the nightclub shooting with the other lady. I can't recall her name at this time. And she's been speaking out for years against Diddy. She's been speaking out for years about recanting her testimony, saying that he was actually the one that really pulled out the gun and shot her in her face. And had she had been wearing, I think, flats, that it would have been a straight headshot instead of where it kind of hit her in the nose. She basically would have been dead unless it was for the shoes that she was wearing that night. And he could have gone after her. He could have gone after Shine, which is the guy that did the time that they placed the shooting on from that nightclub. So I think you kind of know which dog to ignore that it's barking. And I don't see him going after anyone in this case or anyone outside. Now, of course, there are civil cases that's, currently pending, which with the way the verdict went today, the 3 charges he was found not guilty on, I don't see the civil cases being able to have a strong leg to stand on. Of course, we'll see what comes in the next, 11, 12 months or so. But I don't think so because, again, law is about setting precedents and using previous cases for your current case. And with him being found not guilty on RICO, sex trafficking, by coercion on 2 counts, that's pretty much almost going to nip those other civil cases in the bud, but we'll see how it goes. Just wanted to bring to you those updates and provide for you my opinion. If you think he's going to get out today, don't hesitate to post in the comments whether you think he's getting out today or if he's going home. And if you think he's going to serve a lengthy sentence, which anything over 10 years versus a shorter sentence, which is anything under 10, post in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.